First topic, the Impala. Recently, I was watching the television program Mammals on Netflix. This is one of those Planet Earth type programs narrated by the esteemed and legendary conservationist David Attenborough. I am a big fan of these types of programs and a lifelong fan of the natural world. It is easy to discount these types of programs as boring, unimportant, and in some ways, overly familiar. Yes, we get it, David. The natural world is beautiful. Animal life is dynamic and far-reaching. And human development continues to threaten and diminish this ancient but ever-changing realm. I do this myself. But whenever I turn on David's programs, I am struck by the way it inspires my imagination and dredges up new insights into my life and the functionings of the modern world. In Mammals, David is discussing mole rats or something like that, and he mentions in passing the Impala. The screen pans slowly across the African savanna and shows a herd of the deer-like creatures known as the Impalas. Its body consists primarily of three colors. The underside of the animal, its belly, is a milky white. The top side of the animal is a caramel brown, the color of the sun-baked savanna. Between the milky white and the caramel brown is a light tan color. The coloration is not like an inverted pumpkin cream cold brew. The pure white of the milk slowly seeping into the delicious coffee brown. The Impalas chomp grass and look at the camera as they scan surroundings for the ever-present danger of predators. As I sit there on the couch, drinking my whiskey, and briefly observe this beautiful animal, an animal I've seen on TV many times, I'm happy that they are not spending more time on the Impala. It is a commoner of the African savanna, and as far as I'm concerned, it is a background animal. It is far too commonplace for Attenborough and his team to spend much time on. If the Impala is featured in a nature documentary, it is usually because it is the prey of some far more sexy predator. I, along with the rest of the world, have written off the Impala as rather uninteresting. So much so, in fact, that I realize that the animal Impala is not the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the word Impala. The first thing that comes to mind is the American car model, the Chevy Impala. The Chevy Impala is a budget sedan, a car for the masses. It is a reasonable car. It seems to define itself by not standing out, by its commonness. It looks like it could go fairly fast, but is in no way seen as a fast car, and nobody would ever claim it was. It gets moderately good gas mileage, but it is not a car that anybody would ever label as eco-friendly. There is nothing particularly cool, unique, or trendy about the car, but it does enough with the structure of its body that nobody is going to tease you for owning a Chevy Impala. Nobody's going to say it's dorky. Nobody's going to say it's cool. Nobody's going to say that you are a tree hugger, and nobody's going to say that you don't care about the environment. Nobody's going to say anything to you at all. It is a car, and in this society, most of us need cars to function. And you have a car that is simply that, designed to function. If you are the owner of a Chevy Impala, you're probably someone who likes to say things like, "It gets me from point A to point B." You are a common man with common needs, and you're just trying to survive, so you bought a common car. Chevy Impalas are one of the most popular cars on the road, and they have been for a couple of decades now. For that reason, most of the Chevy Impalas that I see on the road are older cars. It's not that they aren't selling new Chevy Impalas. Perhaps they are. It's because they have been selling so many for so many years, it makes sense that the older versions outnumber the new ones on the roads. When I picture a Chevy Impala, I tend to picture a beat-up car with significant damage to the aesthetic features of the vehicle. Maybe even one of its tires is a black-rimmed spare tire. The felt lining of the roof interior is sagging a bit. The windows are partially lowered because the driver is a smoker. I first notice the car coming up quickly behind me in the rear view, and as it gets close, it swerves abruptly into the left lane and zooms past me. No blinker. It doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but you don't need a super powerful engine to be one of the fastest drivers on the road. I get a quick look at the hunched driver who stares blankly straight ahead. This is not a happy person, but they aren't upset with anyone or anything in particular. They are aggressive only so much as they feel they need to be. They are getting from point A to point B. My view of the Chevy Impala is not a negative one. It is also not a positive one. Maybe my mind is structured a bit more to notice the negatives. All of the positives of the Chevy Impala and the driver are the positives of the common, the positives of the everyday survivor, and as such, they are things that are difficult to comment on. So naturally, what is left for my observational mind is to take note of things that are a sign of stress, the signs of degradation, wearing upon this commoner's ability to survive. Returning to the passing shot in David Attenborough's Mammals documentary. Again, though the Impala is in fact a mammal, it is not one of the featured mammals of this particular series. It is part of the background. It is part of the setting, and it is shown on camera for only a couple of seconds, chomping grass. And when I see it, I realize that my first association with the word Impala is not for the original animal itself. It's with the cars that I see on the roads. Looking at the animal, I am struck with a bit of surprise that this majestic deer-like creature is not anything like the stressed out and degraded vehicles I see carelessly passing me on the highway on the way from point A to point B. The animal version of the Impala looks young, strong, vibrant. Its belly is firm, and its posture has an almost regal quality to it. Its antlers are unimpressive compared to something like a reindeer or a moose. What I am struck by is the kind of pointed reasonability to everything in its physique. This creature is designed for survival on the African savanna. If its antlers were cumbersome in any way, shape, or form, its ability to escape its predators would be inhibited. Its coloration is beautiful, but again, it doesn't do anything more than it has to in this department. Its colors provide some camouflage amongst the baked grass of its environment, but there is a reasonability to them. The colors do enough to be called plain while still blending in to the plain itself. When I saw how healthy, strong, and sort of regal the Impala was, there was a separation, a divergence from what my internal image of what the word Impala had come to mean to me. Shouldn't this animal be more similar to the stressed out, degraded, and worn down Chevy Impalas I've seen on the road? The Impala is the commoner of the African savanna, just as the Chevy Impala is the commoner of the American freeway. The branding of the Chevy Impala wanted us to associate the vehicle with the Impala of the African savanna. However, the opposite has taken place. Being a man of the modern world, my primary association with Impala came to be with the worn out sedan I see on the highways. The vehicle degraded my view of the animal rather than the animal uplifting my view of the vehicle. I came to instinctually expect the Impala of the African savannah to match my image of the worn out, stressed out Chevy. Impalas are regal and robust animals, simple and beautiful in their simplicity. When given the chance, they stroll around, chomping on grass, enjoying a relaxed meal surrounded by friends. I believe this was the intent of the Chevy Impala branding, to tie it to the regal Impala. And I hope one day soon that intent will be realized. That the Chevy Impala will be viewed as regal and robust, a vehicle that is beautiful in its simplicity. Next topic. Disney adults. Disney adults are under attack. It is becoming commonplace amongst the opinion-making zeitgeist intelligentsia to label adults who enjoy Disney World and Disney products as less than. What am I talking about? What is being said about Disney adults? They are viewed as people whose maturation into proper thinking and responsible adults has been stunted. They are people who are willingly choosing to remain children in both their thoughts, actions, and aspirations. What does this mean? Why is this a problem? For starters, let's consider what Disney and its offerings are supposed to provide the populace. Disney World provides a realm of products that are designed for kids, and hypothetically, those that are kids at heart. It is a world of quote unquote magic, a world of pure intentions, where evil villains serve only as a temporary foil to kind-hearted heroes. Whimsy and fantasy rule the day. This is the product of Disney World. Disney is a business, and behind the scenes of this business, however well intended it may be, it is as ugly and pragmatic and adult as any modern day multinational organization designed to anesthetize the masses. Anesthesia is the practice of using narcotics to numb you to the real world. Many things can be used as an anesthetic. Alcohol, sex, money, candy, exercise. These things are not bad in their own right, but the style of use characterizes whether or not they are problematic. Is Disney World actually being used this way? Is Disney World the problem, or are we? Originally, Disney World was designed as a family experience. Somewhere a mother and father could bring their 3 little whippersnappers and enjoy a fantasy world where everything was fun and pure and the forces of good always triumphed. A magical fantasy world. This took the imagination of the child, maximized it, and made it tangible. A child may have read about a knight who saved a beautiful princess from a magnificent castle, a castle guarded by an evil dragon. But the reality was playing with sticks in their backyard, and it was a stretch to match their real world to the dream world they saw on the screen or read about in books. In Disney World, it all became real. And not only that, the need to suspend their imagination was further discarded because as a child in Disney World, they were no longer the sideshow to these real world events. They were now the star of the whole occasion, no longer brushed aside as some sort of auxiliary furniture item in need of protection, as they were in typical real-world events. Parents are catered to in Disney World as well, albeit in their own way. Let us consider a more low-rent version of an amusement park to further prove this point. When I was a kid, there was a place called Tunnels of Fun. Tunnels of Fun was very similar to Chuck E. Cheese's, without the weird mouse theme. It was indoors, and the centerpiece attraction was a massive network of tunnels, slides, and ball pits. There were arcade games and a food bar that served pizzas and sodas and whatnot. For what I think was my 6th birthday, we had a party at Tunnels of Fun. This lived in my memory for a long time as the greatest birthday party ever. And I think all of my friends that attended the party would probably agree. But thinking back on it, it seemed like a little slice of hell for any parent that was there. Tunnels of Fun was located in a strip mall. It was indoors with low ceilings, with plastic picnic table seating options. It was filled with the echoes of high-pitched screaming of kids. The shitty pizza was probably a small consolation for parents who were always struggling to find a quality meal for themselves to eat. Chuck E. Cheese came along a few years later, and the only difference was the introduction of this creepy mouse with no nostalgic value at all. I'm sure everyone enjoyed this crazy costumed character walking around, parents included, but more in a nihilistic, what the fuck sort of way. It's honestly hard for me to imagine Chuck E. Cheese interacting with a sad or depressed person and the effect not being an amplification of the depression in some way. As a parent, I don't think you look at Chuck E. Cheese wandering around a strip mall arcade and think to yourself, actually, the world is not as sad as I thought it was. This is not the case with Disney World. Disney World is designed to put parents at ease just as much as it's designed to put kids at ease. When you enter Disney World's Magic Kingdom, for instance, you are struck by the majesty of Cinderella's castle, a truly impressive, fantastical structure. Leading up to the castle, you are walking along an area called Main Street, USA. An area that, rather than tapping into some sort of fairy tale world, brings to mind an idyllic nostalgia of a world that is very familiar to most Americans. This is a fantasy world in its own right, but one tied much more closely to the real life of most people. It is not some luxurious mansion setting, but the bustling everyday haunt that is common to so many people's lives. It brings a sort of pride to the life you are already living back home, and it also inspires you, reminds you of what you want your life to look like, what life has looked like in the past, and what it could look like still. You are in an open-air setting, in the beautiful, warm climate of Central Florida. Similar to Chuck E. Cheese's, there are people dressed as characters. But these characters are from movies and stories your parents enjoyed as kids, that you enjoyed as a kid, and that your kids are enjoying today. It doesn't depress you because it means more to you than just the strange high of seeing some weirdo dressed up in a costume. It means a connection with your family, and a connection to the eternal renewal of children and innocent minds. This sort of connection you experience with the Disney stories and characters is the same kind of resonance that the rides and attractions come to have. For instance, there is one animatronic show in Frontierland, a section of Magic Kingdom called the Tiki Room. The show consists of a bunch of shitty animatronic tropical birds that sing random songs. You can hear the animatronics creaking as they move. It is by no means a quality attraction, but I enjoy it because I can remember my pup-up enjoyed it. My pup-up liked it because it was an excuse for him to fall asleep in the air conditioning. I also enjoy the air conditioning. It's enjoyable for parents because it's a pleasant place to be. Your kids are happy to be there, and most of all because of the experiences of nostalgia and connections to family. As I discuss my own experiences with Disney World, I consider the original intent of Disney World, a place built for entire families to enjoy. The issue of the Disney adult and its implications begin to speak to me a bit more. The Disney adult that is being referred to is not the parent on a family vacation, nor are they the uncle or aunt accompanying their siblings on a family trip. These are grown folks who are making the trip to Disney World on their own, without children and without the aspiration of having children. Why is this a problem? For starters, Disney adults are competing with children and families. Seeing as Disney World exists in the physical world, it has its limits in what it can offer to its guests. There are only so many seats available on It's a Small World, and the ride itself can only process so many guests. They could increase the rate of speed the ride moves at, and as such, give more guests the opportunity to ride the attraction in a given amount of time, but that would change the experience of the attraction. The ride is a relaxed attraction that moseys through an idyllic animatronic world. Increasing the speed of the ride would do a disservice to the experience of the ride itself. In the hypothetical model that Disney World was designed for, the line is filled with people of all ages. The only way you get people of all ages is by having many different family groups. Disney adults add only to the adult demographic. But again, why is this a problem? It is difficult for anyone to make a trip to Disney World. It almost goes without saying, but Disney World is expensive. It requires time, money, and travel. For a family, this trip is even more difficult because a large part of their group is dependents. Kids have no money. They cannot travel alone. And so the parents are naturally under significant financial strain and have made significant sacrifices to be there. Sacrifices that are repaid to them mostly through the enjoyment of their children. The trip is also costly to Disney adults, but less so because they have no dependents. Not only does it cost less for them as an individual to get there, but the benefit they expect to receive once they are there is direct. Also, it is easier, less costly, for the Disney adult to reap those benefits once they are there. Not only are they only financially responsible for themselves, they are also physically only responsible for themselves. They don't have to carry toddlers when they get tired. They don't have to cut up chicken fingers for them. And they don't have to help kids navigate the park or worry about them getting lost. This has a compounding effect. If a goal is more easily accomplished for a certain demographic, then a higher percentage of this advantaged demographic will accomplish this goal when compared to a more disadvantaged demographic. If it is easier for a single Disney adult to find themselves in line for It's a Small World than it is for a family of four, and they all have an equal desire to be in that line, it stands to reason that Disney adults will be out competing the Disney families. So it's easy to picture an exhausted parent being a bit resentful when they are in line for a ride designed for children, standing behind a group of 35-year-olds with no children. The parent is there for the children to have a good time. That good time for their children is being impeded by full-grown adults who are in it for themselves. Figuratively speaking, they are watching emotionally stunted adults take candy from their baby. What do I mean by emotionally stunted in the context of the Disney adult? To explore this characterization, let's focus on the cliché of taking candy from a baby. The full phrase is actually like taking candy from a baby. This is typically used to refer to something that was easy to accomplish, often in the context of a theft of some kind. The commonly understood meaning is not the moral judgment that is implied by the word theft, but I am taking the phrase a bit further and applying the moral judgment myself. I don't think that you will disagree that it is morally wrong to take candy from a baby. But why is that? The only way the phrase, like taking candy from a baby, makes any sense is if the taker of the candy is a full-grown adult. If the taker of the candy was a baby themselves, then the ease of the task would not be self-evident. It is self-evident, and so the candy taker is an adult. Why is it wrong for an adult to take candy from a baby? The baby is defenseless and innocent. It can be assumed that the baby did not obtain the candy on their own. The baby was gifted the candy. The baby has no way of obtaining more candy by its own means, and has no way of getting the candy back from the adult who took it. If it was easy to take the candy from the baby, it will be even easier to keep the candy away from the baby once the adult has it. The only way a baby can obtain candy is if it is gifted the candy. How did the gifter of the candy manage to obtain the candy? If the person gifted the candy to a baby, it is likely that this candy gifter is not the same type of person that would steal candy from a baby. And since it is not easy to steal candy from an adult, this candy gifter likely obtained this candy through legitimate means. It takes work and effort that cost the candy gifter dearly to obtain candy through legitimate means. The candy gifter then does not enjoy the spoils of their sacrifice directly by keeping the candy for themselves, but instead gives the candy to the baby and gets their reward through the happiness of said baby. So now we return to the taking of the candy from the baby and its repercussions. This act not only harms the baby from whom the candy was taken, but it also harms the person who gifted the baby the candy to begin with. The baby and the candy gifter are deprived of the benefits of the candy. Conversely, the candy taker enjoys the benefits of the candy at less cost than it would have cost them otherwise had they obtained the candy through legitimate means. How does the candy taker justify such an action to themselves? Do they view themselves as an immoral rogue who delights in the theft of candy? I think not. The candy taker views themselves as equally deserving of the candy, and they view the candy as there for the taking. They view themselves as an innocent, a kid at heart, an emotional baby. To be a kid at heart is a beautiful concept, but it must be understood fully to be an actual positive thing. To be a kid at heart is to acknowledge that you are, in reality, an adult. A child doesn't have to say that they are a kid at heart because they are a kid in its entirety. To say you are a kid at heart would be redundant for a child. For an adult to say they are a kid at heart is to acknowledge that they are in fact an adult and not a kid at all. And thusly, we land upon the emotional stuntedness of the Disney adult. A person with all of the capabilities of a grown-up in society, but still granting themselves permissions to the fruits of childhood. An adult justifying their own right to take candy from a baby. I don't believe that anybody chooses to be emotionally stunted, just as I don't believe that anyone chooses to be emotionally mature. There are little choices we are able to make along the way to push ourselves in one direction or another, but when a national phenomenon such as this one exists, there are greater societal forces at play. Why are Disney adults emotionally stunted? And why does it seem like they are becoming more and more prevalent in our society? A Disney adult is someone who not only views themselves as a kid at heart, an admirable trait, but actually takes that concept one step further and views themselves as a full-on child. This is an obvious fantasy. And I'm sure it is as clear to the Disney adult that they are not a child as it is to the frustrated parent standing behind them in the line to meet Cinderella. The Disney adult walks amongst us in the real world. They sit across from us in the office. They are witness to the same news cycle. They pay their taxes. They attend the funerals of loved ones. They get in fender benders on the interstate. What they do not do, as is probably clear from the rest of this dissertation, is have children of their own. And that is not a judgment. As of now, I have no children of my own. I don't think it's necessary to have children of your own, and I don't think the decision to not have children is only the destiny of emotionally stunted persons. I do, however, see it as a unifying theme amongst Disney adults, and I am proposing that Disney adults, as heretofore described, are emotionally stunted individuals. The decision to not have children in the emotionally mature individual is not the abdication of the responsibility of adulthood. The emotionally mature adult admits to themselves and to others that they are not a child. The Disney adult does no such thing. The Disney adult values themselves as their own child, worthy of the benefits of childhood, and uses their undeniable adultness to obtain those benefits. Many of us wish, in some way, that we could remain children, but reality forces us to accept that as impossible. We can confront this impossibility in two ways. We can use our adult means to create the temporary fantasy that we are in fact still children, as Disney adults do. Or we can have children of our own and bear witness to childhood once more through their eyes. From a short-sighted viewpoint, the choice of the Disney adult is the more satisfactory option. Not only are the benefits more easy to obtain, those benefits are also felt in a more direct way. You maintain the fantasy of your own childness, and you enjoy the benefits of that fantasy directly. However, old age and death comes to us all, and the fantasy is fleeting. As time passes, the fantasy becomes more and more difficult to maintain, and when you eventually find yourself in a coffin, the fantasy and everything else will be buried with you. Do I think this is news to the Disney adult? No. I think they are keenly aware of this fact, perhaps more so than anybody else. And so, like an addict who drinks to forget, they double down on that fantasy. They invest more in the fantasy of their own childness. With each passing year, the contrasts of reality become more stark, and the need to fulfill the doomed fantasy becomes more desperate. If the Disney adult is aware of the doom of their fantasy, then why do they participate in it? If they were uninterested in children, why would they invest so much in pretending that they themselves are children? And if they value childhood so much, then why have they decided that they do not want children? This is not some random personality quirk, but a growing phenomenon. The Disney adult is not some monster of selfish stupidity. They are someone who, in an ideal world, would have children themselves, but societal forces have made that an undesirable option. I have said many things so far that would make it seem like I view Disney adults as some kind of villain. That is not the case. Although they have selfish behaviors, tendencies, and are impeding, if not destroying, the wholesome experience of families in the Disney theme park, I do not view them as the villain. Nay, I view them as the victim of societal forces. It is no secret that the middle class of our country is disappearing. The news cycle continues to whirl about, chattering about authoritarianism, World War III, and spiraling healthcare costs. An indefinable but widespread mental health crisis is sweeping our nation. Everyone is losing their minds, and it seems like we are powerless to stop it. Things are hypothetically easier than ever before with advances in medicine, technology, nutrition, and logistics. But we are unhappier, unhealthier, and poorer than ever before. Maybe there are fewer of us struggling in coal mines than ever before, but we are all struggling. There is a sense of unease and dread that is undeniable. And if you are one of the few that finds yourself optimistic, I count myself amongst them. It still cannot be denied that the general outlook for the future is one of fear, one of insecurity. The Disney adults live in the same world as you and me, and they value children, childhood, and the fantasy of childhood just as much as anyone else, if not more so. And for that reason, they are making what to them seems like the intellectually compassionate decision. Living in a world of anxiety and fear, a world that feels insecure and that they are told will become less secure, they feel the need to escape into the fantasy of childhood strongly. The same environment that reinforces the need for the fantasy reinforces the fact that it is a fantasy, and an unsustainable one at that. Their parents were able to make trips to Disney World and bring them there when they were children themselves. And now as adults, they can barely afford to travel to Disney World as an individual. The trip is a temporary fantasy, but it is an obtainable goal. Having a happy marriage and kids and being able to afford to take them all to Disney World, that does not seem like an obtainable goal. That is a fantasy they cannot even afford to dream about. The Disney, the Disney adult is a smart and compassionate person. They are good citizens, and as such, they have accepted the world that has been described to them. Things were better before than they are now, and they will only get worse. They are holding on to a memory because they don't believe in a future. They are enjoying Disney World as adults because it helps them to remember when things were good, and in doing so, choosing not to take part in the apocalypse they are told is coming. Final topic: self limiting beliefs. Recently, I bought a book on Lawrence of Arabia. I enjoy learning about history, but I tend to consume things that would be considered popular history: Netflix documentaries, podcasts, Hollywood movies. My consumption is typically dictated by what is most easily available, and as such, the things I consume are typically pretty superficial and on topics that have been beaten to death. Over time, it gets repetitive. The Allies storming the beach on D-Day, George Washington crossing the Delaware, the Vikings raiding British Isles. I am always seeking new and different information, but I am a victim of my own laziness in the most readily available media. When I bought the book on Lawrence of Arabia, I did so because I was feeling ambitious. He was someone who I'd always heard referenced but never knew much about. I knew there was a movie about him. From a brief search on the interwebs, he seemed to be a foundational figure in much of the popular history I was familiar with. There's a famous old movie about him starring Sir Laurence Olivier, but that is not my cup of tea. I don't watch old movies. I watch movies from the 80s and 90s, but nothing beyond that. It reaches a point where the limits of the camera equipment and the cultural divide between me and the filmmakers just feels like too much. The sensibilities of old-fashioned people are different from my own, to the point where watching their work is not an enjoyable experience. Even hearing the name Sir Laurence Olivier repulses me a bit. I'm not proud of that fact, and I hope to grow out of it. I'm just being honest. But I was curious about Lawrence of Arabia, and so I bought a well-reviewed book that detailed his life and the history in which he lived. I bought the book, but I did not and have not read it. And having not read the book and seeing it sitting in my Kindle library, I mocked myself. You thought you were going to read a full book on Lawrence of Arabia? You're not that kind of guy. It is a passing thought, a blip in the conscious mind of yours truly. It is easy for me to disregard such a thought. I've read other books, and I fully believe that I am capable of reading more books. It is a strength of mine to cast aside such negative thoughts. But this time, I'm not going to. I am going to meditate on that thought. I'm going to deconstruct it. I'm going to skin that thought alive, slit open its belly, and display its innards. I'm going to do it for you, and I'm going to do it for me. You thought you were going to read a full book on Lawrence of Arabia? You're not that kind of guy. Where is this thought coming from? Who is saying this thought? I would like to say that I am saying it myself, but I don't agree with the sentiment. It is attacking my confidence, my sense of agency. I bought the book because I wanted to read it. I wanted to read it because I wanted to know the information that was in it. The statement is saying that not only do I not know myself, but that it is laughable that I thought I did. My own brain is telling me that my desires, my aspirations, are a joke. You thought you were going to read a full book on Lawrence of Arabia? Of course, there are people who read books on people like Lawrence of Arabia. I cannot say that I know them personally. The people who read books on such esteemed and exotic subject matters are as esteemed and exotic to me as the subject matter itself. They are in a separate social class, and my own desire to even read a book like that suggests a certain uppityness in my personality. Who do I think I am? Who do I think I can be? The thought is labeling me as a fatally average person. It is belittling and degrading for me. It is belittling and degrading me for wanting to better myself. The question is sarcastic, and the question asker leaves it up to my own insecurities to answer the question. No, you're right. If I'm honest with myself, I never really thought I had the intellect or the patience to consume a book such as this one. If I'm being truly honest with myself, I bought the book to pad my own ego. I bought the book to give credence to a false version of myself, a version of myself where I challenge myself to read non-popular history books, a version of myself where I am knowledgeable about historical time periods and places that interest me. This critical question asker does not only mock me, chiding me with a sarcastic question. It hears my answers and reaffirms my doubts. It tells me, you are not that kind of guy. What is the purpose of such thoughts? Does a thought that belittles my ambitions help me to be more likely to survive in the modern world? This type of thought is not unique in my mind, nor do I think this type of thought is unique to my mind. This type of thought is common in my mind as I think it is common in all minds. It is what is referred to as a self-limiting belief. Why is it so common? I believe in evolution, and I believe evolution is not limited to physical characteristics, biology, or chemistry. The concept of evolution applies to human thought as well. How does evolution work? Evolution is a process by which certain characteristics are selected for based on how they benefit that organism's ability to proliferate. From that logic, and judging from the commonplace presence of self-limiting beliefs, it stands to reason that self-limiting beliefs are characteristics of evolutionarily successful organisms. How can negging yourself make you an evolutionarily successful organism? Let's dive further into the term self-limiting belief. How does one define the self? I would start by listing the traits of my personality, the nature of my personal relationships, my hobbies, my beliefs, my job or lack thereof, the characteristics of my body, my name, my tastes in food, where I live. Even as I say these categories to describe myself, I realize how incomplete they are. It is actually quite difficult to describe yourself and what exactly that self is. Philosophers, theologians, and scientists struggle to define the self as well. I could say I live in Austin, Texas, but I just moved here and may not live here forever. I could say that my name is Luke, but I could change my name. I could say that I am a married man, but I was not always married. Was I not myself before I was married? Would I not still be myself if I changed my name? The self is a concept. It is indefinable if we don't create artificial limits. We have self-limiting beliefs so we can hold on to some sort of idea of what it is to be a person. So we can try to relate to our own existence. If we don't have self-limiting beliefs, we don't have a self. We have self-limiting beliefs because we believe that we exist as individuals. So how does believing we exist as an individual fit into the logic of evolution? Why do so many humans possess self-limiting beliefs? Let us consider how a trait proliferates through the logic of evolution. We will use the capybara as an example. The capybara is a massive swamp-dwelling rodent with brown eyes. Have you ever seen a capybara with anything other than brown eyes? Me neither. So it must be an evolutionarily successful trait. But why? Imagine a blue-eyed capybara. I'm talking the Paul Newman of capybaras. Now that would be a good-looking, sexually attractive capybara. I imagine the blue-eyed capybara would have a lot of potential mates. All the female capybaras would be getting lost in the sensitive, deep gaze of the blue-eyed, Paul Newman-esque capybara. But sexual attractiveness is only one component when considering the evolutionary prospects of the capybara. The blue eyes of the capybara aren't so well suited to the harsh sunlight of the capybara's environment. Those blue eyes don't work too good, and this capybara can't find much food. So now we got an underfed capybara who can't see too good. Still, the lady capybaras don't care. Blue-eyed capybara is a nice guy, and he's oh so pretty. So he's still got plenty of mating options. An underfed, blind capybara can still get it in. But now, all the brown-eyed male capybaras are starting to talk. This guy's taking all the good mates, and he's not doing any work around the capybara camp. So the brown-eyed males hatch a plan. One night, they sneak up on old Blue Eyes. This is easy to do because he can't see real good. They attack him and they drown him in the swamp. This is also easy to do because he is underfed. Sure, he has a bunch of offspring and a couple of them have blue eyes. But now the brown-eyed males know what to do. They kill all these young blue eyes before they have an opportunity to spread their seed. So how does this story of the blue-eyed capybara, the logic of evolution, apply to the proliferation of self-limiting beliefs? If someone is negging themselves, how can that make them more evolutionarily successful? Someone who does not possess self-limiting beliefs does not believe in limiting the self. This person has unlimited self-belief, which I think most would agree is a rare and attractive trait. But it has its drawbacks. As we discussed before, the concept of the self is impossible to define without constructing artificial limits. But there are benefits to these artificial limits. If you believe in these artificial limits, and thus believe in the self, you then believe in death. Death is the end of the self. A belief in a limited self makes belief in death logical, but it also makes accepting death that much more difficult. And the only way to overcome the death of the self is to perpetuate your own existence through mating. through having children. Children, for those who adhere to the self-limiting belief, are the only way to perpetuate the existence of oneself. They consist partially of your own biology, and so this is an easy, logical leap to make that children are a continuation of yourself. If your own children are a part of yourself, then other people's children are separate from yourself. And as such, other people's children are in direct competition with the continued survival of yourself. Knowing this, on an either conscious or subconscious level, the person with self-limiting beliefs makes decisions that prioritize their own self over the self of others. All thoughts, and all actions of the person with self-limiting beliefs are made with the goal of perpetuating the self, and in that way they hope to overcome death. Their selfish decisions help to ensure the survival of their own self. But how does the person with the unlimited self-beliefs behave? The person who does not place limits on their belief in the self does not believe in the self at all. The self is a construct that is impossible to define without accepting arbitrary limits. If you do not believe in these arbitrary limits, then you do not believe in the self at all. If you don't believe in the self, then you do not believe in death. Death is itself a self-limiting belief. The person who has self-limiting beliefs partially defines themselves by acknowledging the limit of that self in death. The person who has unlimited self-belief could be called unselfish. All things considered equal, if the person with unlimited self-belief is not prioritizing the needs of the personal self over others, this person treats all needs equally. Very unselfish. Being unselfish is typically considered a sexually attractive trait. So why is the person possessing unlimited self-belief not successful in proliferating their traits if the trait itself is considered sexually attractive? I would argue that being unselfish is not as sexually attractive as commonly believed. A person with unlimited self-beliefs does not see a separation between their person and the peoples of the world. They are all one thing. They are part of the universal self. And as such, this person does not see a need to proliferate because the concept does not make sense. They are part of the universal self, and to attempt to proliferate that self would be redundant. It is possible and likely that the person who has unlimited self-belief would find many mates who are attracted to their unselfish nature. But those people who are attracted to that unselfish nature are attracted to it because it serves their own concept of their own self. The people who are attracted to mate with a person who has unlimited self-belief are people who believe in the self. They are people with self-limiting beliefs who are attracted to the person with the unlimited self-belief because it serves the needs of their own self. On top of that, the person who mated with the person with unlimited self-belief will be let down because the offspring that they generate will not be prioritized by the person with unlimited self-belief. The person with unlimited self-belief will have a connection with their offspring, but that connection will be no different than the connection that the person has with all the people who are part of the universal self. And because the person with unlimited self-belief does not prioritize their own offspring above others, that offspring will be at a survival disadvantage to the offspring of those with self limiting beliefs. And because those folks are interested in preserving their own self and that of their offspring, they will attack and eliminate the person with unlimited self belief. The person with unlimited self belief, not believing in their own existence or death to begin with, will have no reason to fight back. And so the person with unlimited self belief and their offspring will die out. So, why do I have self limiting beliefs? Why do I have thoughts like, you thought you were going to read Lawrence of Arabia? You're not that kind of guy. I have these beliefs because I believe in the self. I believe in my own individual existence and my own death. I come from a long line of self-interested people, selfish people, people who had self-limiting beliefs themselves, people who believed in death. My ancestors were driven to perpetuate their own existence through mating, through children. These are the characteristics of the successful human organism. The evolutionary successful human organism believes that they are a limited person with a limited existence and definable limits. They seek to extend those limits in the only way they know how, by physically expanding ourselves through biological offspring and teaching those offspring to prioritize the existence of the self. Because that is the only way for the limited self to continue. We have self-limiting beliefs because we seek eternal life, but we believe in death.